Well, hello. I hope you are all doing well. My name is Mon, and today I am bringing you a little loose Life is Strange discussion video. So I've been thinking about everything that went wrong with double exposure and mainly mostly the complaints that were made against it. And I decided to put my writing hat on and think, how could the story have been a bit better? How could double exposure been better on the run up to Reunion? Now, you may remember I made a video a few weeks ago discussing if Reunion and double exposure were done as one game, and that got a very mixed reception because some people agree with me, some people don't, some people are still convinced it was made within 10 months. I still stick by everything I said in that video. I still believe that it was the plan from the get-go, so I am going to be conducting this video from that point of view, that Reunion was planned all along. So when I think of Life is Strange double exposure and what went wrong with it, the three things that comes to mind is the lack of Chloe, the vague story, and the up in the air ending. They were the three kind of things I can think of on the top of my head that the fans were complaining about the most, they're the most unhappy with. And let's be honest, people will say this is not true, but it is true. It was the lack of Chloe. People were pissed over Chloe, and all other opinions and judgments about the game just went downhill from there. No one cared to give the game good reception because they were so pissed about Chloe. So first off, we're going to touch on the lack of Chloe in double exposure. Now again, if they knew that Reunion was happening, and I believe they did, I think they could have done Chloe so differently in double exposure, and it would have not been loved by the fans, but it would have gone over better with the fans, I feel like. So if you remember, Chloe was completely hidden in the first game in double exposure. She didn't have a profile picture. Her phone profile picture was a butterfly. Her social media picture was a skull, I think it was. I can't remember. But we never see Chloe. And a lot of fans, I remember, felt that Chloe was just being erased. It was just a full deletion of Chloe. And while I don't think it would have been loved by fans, I think it would have gone over better if they had more vague previews to Chloe's model, because I have no doubt in my mind they were trying to keep her hidden for the Reunion reveal. And why I say that is because the new Life is Strange book coming out, that cover was kept secret for so long, and we all speculated, maybe Chloe's on the cover. And lo and behold, about a week or two after Reunion was announced, we get the book cover. So I think they were trying to hype up the reveal of seeing older Chloe, and that was why the lack of pictures, the no view of her whatsoever. But I think that could have been handled so much differently, and I think the fans would have appreciated if it was handled in a way that Chloe was in her profile pictures, but they may have been over the shoulder shots, they may have been scenic type photos, silhouette type photos, little artsy angled photos where you don't actually see Chloe, but that's her in the photo. I totally understand why they were hiding Chloe, but I think they could have done it in a better way. Because I think what angered the fans the most was they felt kind of Chloe was gone for good. Whereas with this, it was kind of no, hang on, Chloe's here. She's just not with Max, but she's here. They could have treated her more like a person. I've always said this, but I think there could have been a lot more to Chloe and Max's breakup. They could have discussed things a lot more, because it was kind of just Chloe sent the letter to Max, broke up, they never spoke to each other again. And that is just too plain and simple, I think it would have been better as well, even with the text messages, showing that Max tried to contact Chloe after that letter, or showing, attempts at contact, even though they're not together now, that they attempted to talk it out. Max wanted to talk it out, and it would have given a better idea of where each girl stood on terms of the breakup. And then again, one thing that I didn't like, and I'm just going to say here now, I hated the crosstalk post with Victoria, because I just hated that new budding friendship they had in double exposure, and it was completely random, and yet there was no sign of Victoria and Max being in contact. I hated that. I hated that random Victoria friendship, and I think they could have done without that. And while on the topic of crosstalk, I think they could have put more posts about Max and Chloe, like, previous posts, like, she could scroll back on Chloe's older posts and seeing, like, statuses. Oh, me and Max are here, little selfie photo. Again, could have done it in ways where it won't expose her character model. All of those little things, I think, would have made a huge difference to the lack of Chloe in Double Exposure. I think it's a shame overall, but it is what it is. And we did get Chloe back in the end, but I think it could have been handled a lot better. The next thing I want to touch on is the up in the air ending. So Life is Strange Double Exposure, it's known for its infamous Max Caulfield real return at the end. And personally, I hate that. I hate it so much. I hate how it turned the Life is Strange games into a Avengers type series. Like, I hate how it's known as the Avengers now. And the thing is, I would have probably had a different reception to Double Exposure had I known that Reunion was set in stone, that Reunion was going to happen. It was a 2-game contract. I probably would have had a different reaction to Double Exposure if I had known that. Because for me, Double Exposure, I didn't like the ending. And what I didn't like about it was it didn't do well. So the chances were there wasn't going to be another game. And I was turned off Double Exposure because I felt like that could be the last we'll ever see of Max, despite that Max Caulfield's real return. But I think if I had known that Reunion was set in stone, which it was because it was a 2-game contract, I would have been a lot more open and excited with the ending of Double Exposure, because from my point of view, it was Max Caulfield didn't return. And in my head, I'm like, well, the game's not doing too well, so it looks like she might not be returning. So what they should have done, in my opinion, was remove that whole Max Caulfield will return and show us. Give us a teaser like the original games did. Don't just give us the text saying, oh, she'll be back. Show us a glimpse of what you've been working on. Show us a teaser of Reunion. And more specifically, show us something that is happening with Chloe. I had said it in one of my trailer analysis that it would have been so cool to see Double Exposure end and you just see an over the shot view of a girl with green hair walking up to Caledon looking around. I thought that would have been the perfect ending to Double Exposure. Not just the vague texting, because even with how it ended, like, it was kind of like Max Caulfield will return, like, for what? What's she going to return for? What's going to happen next? There's already been a storm. Safi is gone AWOL. Like, what's going to happen next? And I think they should have showed us rather than just giving us the text. Now, I don't know what way the contract and NDAs worked, but I think had they been allowed, I think they should have said it right from the get-go, there's going to be another game. We'll be back with another game, instead of the vague Max Caulfield will return, because that was more so like, if we make another game, it'll be Max. Where if they were allowed to, I think they should have just said it, oh, Max will be back for another game. We are making another game. Max is going to be in it. Rather than keeping everything like, vague and mysterious. I think they were trying to create a mysterious vibe around it, but I think it just fell horribly flat. One thing I did notice though in Reunion, and I would have loved if they had done this in Double Exposure. So in Reunion at the very beginning, when you look through Max's phone, if Chloe was alive, you received a text from her that says, hey, I heard about the storm, hope you're okay. Now, Max does receive that in the end of Double Exposure. She receives that same text from Chloe and you're not given the option to answer it. But we did end Double Exposure knowing that Chloe had reached out. Now, in the end of Double Exposure where Chloe was dead, obviously, Max didn't receive a message. There was no message from Chloe. However, in Life is Strange Reunion, in the dead timeline, Max will receive a text. And it's the exact same text from Chloe, only instead of it being from Chloe, it'll be marked in her phone as potential spam. So where Chloe's alive, Max will have the text in both games. If Chloe's dead, she'll only have it in Reunion from a potential spam caller or texter, whatever you want to call it. But I think it would have been huge had Max gotten that potential spam message at the end of Double Exposure. Like, just imagine those who do the playthrough where Chloe dies, they are playing the game, Chloe's dead, they suddenly get a text from a spam number being like, oh, hope you're okay, heard about the storm. And then when they go online and see, hang on, the opposite players got the exact same text and it was from Chloe. I got it from a spam number, so that would have opened up a huge excitement. I don't know the right word I'm looking for, but it would have opened a huge excited discussion. Like, people in one version of Life is Strange were getting a text from an anonymous person that could be Chloe. How is that possible? You know, and that would have opened the door for theories and questions about the next Life is Strange game. And the part I love about that is only select players will get that. Only select players will get to see that. You know, because that was always the best part about Life is Strange in any choice-based game, how you sign online and say, hey, did you guys know this happens? And you only know that because you're in the minority of the choice. Everyone else who's in the majority were like, holy shit, that happens? You know, I think that's the most fun part of, we all get different outcomes based on what we do, and then we don't know about it unless we play it again or we talk to other people about it who have completely different choices. So even if they were not allowed as part of their contract to confirm there's another game coming, I think they should have. That message would have been better than the Max Caulfield will return. I think that message would have been so much better. Now, instead, the major cliffhanger we did get was the cutscene with Diamond, where she had a nosebleed at the end of the Outlook. Safi finds her and she says, I've seen this before, come with me, I'm going to find answers. So without telling us, it highly suggests that Diamond has powers, which, as we know, didn't really go anywhere in Reunion. But they could have used that scene somehow. You know, they could have probably did a crossover with Chloe somehow with that scene, you know? Like, I know it's not possible now because of how Reunion pans out, but, you know, as Diamond was leaving with Safi, she passes a blue-haired girl and we see her, but we don't see her face, and we're like, is that Chloe? So I'm not against the Diamond cutscene at the end, but I do think it could have been more, you know? And dare I say, they could have even had that cutscene with a mysterious girl that we think is Chloe. So the next thing I'm going to touch on now was the very vague story in Double Exposure. Since Double Exposure was clearly made to pave the way for Reunion, Double Exposure was just the build-up, in my opinion. And I know that might sound ridiculous considering it was more expensive than Reunion, but prices aside, I think it was just the build-up. I think Reunion was the game they wanted to tell, and Double Exposure was just the path leading up to it, you know? And I think there might have been more passion in Reunion, and Double Exposure was more of a chore just to kind of set the stage for Reunion, which is why it fell flat in so many areas. But I think one thing they could have done with Double Exposure was link it more into Reunion, you know, have more crossovers between the two. Like, there was things in Reunion that touched on events in Double Exposure. Like, so, for example, Chloe was in Max's nightmare sequence, but Max had forgotten about it. You know, she had suffered from the flashback amnesia, whatever they chose to call it. So Max, before the amnesia, Max knew Chloe was there. But I think little details like that, they could have crossed over more and more, you know, like something that happened in Double Exposure that didn't make sense. Oh, makes sense in Reunion. Oh, a plot hole there? Well, that's explained here. You know, I think they could have done that even more. And as I mentioned, Chloe was in Max's nightmare sequence, and it said then in Reunion that due to the amnesia of the timelines merging, Max forgot about it. But I think they could have added that into Double Exposure a little more. They could have put more of a teaser in there for the fans, you know? You know, they still could have written in Max forgetting, but it could have been a thing like, you know, you as the player wandering around, you could glance up to the lighthouse and you could see Chloe's silhouette there. You could see the silhouette of a girl. And just go with the whole hiding in plain sight approach. You know, I think Double Exposure, they had the chance to tease us non-stop about Reunion, and I don't think they did it enough. I think they should have done it more. And that goes into the next point I have written in my notes, that, you know, once the timelines had merged at the end of the game, there should have been more hints to Chloe. There should have been, you know, even going back to what I said about the text message, that could have been a thing. Maybe in the living timeline, Chloe could have posted something cryptic on Crosstalk, you know, to kind of give us a preview of where Chloe was heading. And again, I cannot stress this enough. I think it needs to have its own video, to be honest. The breakup was so vague. It was so painful. Like, it's so painful how vague the breakup was. And I'm not mad that Max and Chloe broke up. I was never mad about that. For me, it's just no surprise because they are two very traumatized girls, you know? And I wasn't surprised at the breakup, but I was more annoyed at how it was done, how they kind of give up on each other so easily. You know, we hear that they had arguments all the time. Chloe wrote Max a letter saying that she wanted to break up and they'd never seen each other since. There was no attempts to reach out to each other. Like, you know, I would have likened to see some of those arguments. I would have likened to see the trauma firsthand and how it did affect their relationship. I think it could have dived a lot deeper. And it could have been done in forms of the journals or the text messages. You know, it didn't have to be scenes where animators would be involved and that would just cost more money. Like, I think we could have had a bigger story about their breakup. And maybe it was Deck Nine's way of saying, okay, we're going to be vague about the breakup in Double Exposure to kind of hype up Reunion. Or cause a bigger hype for Reunion because, like, oh my god, Chloe's back, they might get back together. But I think had it been handled differently, they could have made it in the sense where, you know, they've been trying to get back together and we have that glimmer of hope that they will get back together in Reunion based on what we've been reading, not because the simple logic that Chloe's going to be back. And I think they could have added more to Max's pain, the pain and loneliness Max was feeling. They could have expanded more on that as well to kind of make the impact of Reunion even stronger. Like, I just think there was so much more they could have done with the breakup. I don't like how vague it was. I'm not surprised they broke up. I'm not angry they broke up, but I would have liked to see a lot more to it. And the last thing I have in my notes here is just imagine the fan response if we saw Chloe at the end of Double Exposure. Like, if we saw that silhouette, that shadow, the green hair, if even we were showing her first nightmare at the end of Double Exposure. Like, imagine the response to that. And imagine if we knew for sure at the end of Double Exposure there would be a sequel. Like, imagine if we knew for sure Max Caulfield is coming back and it's not just going to be based on the sales of this game. Because that's what I thought when I first played Double Exposure. When I saw that Max Caulfield would return, I also knew about the negative response to it. And I was like, she's not returning. She is not returning. If this is a game that's going to be based on how well Double Exposure does, it's not happening. So imagine the fans' response if it ended there and we knew there was more coming. You know, I think we would have had a lot more hope for Double Exposure. I think we would have been a little more open-minded, you know, about details and plot holes, because we're like, okay, no, we are definitely going to be getting an answer to this when Reunion comes out. You know, and imagine if we got more snippets of Chloe in Double Exposure and not just that enhanced photo from Life is Strange 2. I think it would have been much better to see little snippets of Chloe. And again, we didn't have to see her face. We didn't have to see her full character model. We could have just seen little snippets of her. So, you know, maybe like, you know, her looking away from the camera, over the shoulder, a scenic picture, you know, that Max took, because you can see Max taking them, no problem. A scenic photo where Chloe's like walking ahead, something like that. They could have included Chloe in that way. And I think it would have met a much better reception had we seen Chloe a little bit more in the game. And again, without showing her model and without ruining the surprise. And I think more context with the breakup would have been better for Reunion in the long run, because the breakup didn't make sense. It was so vague. Like, it felt like they gave up on their relationship so easily despite everything they've been through. And that's what annoys me. But I think they could have given more context to the breakup and could have given the fans like that fuel to be like, oh, they're going to reunite in the next game. It's going to be all right, you know, like maybe Chloe had said something like, oh, no, she still has feelings for Max, so he might get back together. You know, I think Double Exposure could have done a lot more to build excitement for Reunion. But I think the whole situation with Double Exposure, the only word that comes to mind is vague. I think that they were trying to like put a game out there but not hint at Reunion, what they had coming up. And I think they just might have hid those spoilers a little too tightly because, you know, fans felt that Chloe was just erased. They felt like Chloe wasn't being treated the way she should be. And, you know, I think there would have been many ways around that, like not necessarily changing the whole story of Double Exposure, but I think little details could have been changed that would have helped the fans' perspective on Chloe and would have... These are just little things I feel like could have made Double Exposure better. I know the story had many flaws. It wasn't just Chloe, but like everywhere you look, Chloe's always mentioned somewhere. So you have to admit, Chloe is a big part of the negative reception. So, you know, while the story itself is flawed, I feel like they could have done things so much better with hyping up Reunion, hyping up Chloe's return. There's so much they could have done, but they missed out on it. And I think it's a shame. But I know if I was in a situation where I was making double exposure, knowing what the plan was for reunion, I would have been torturing fans with like little teasers. I would have been ruthless with the amount of teasing. So I think they should have just gone all in on that. But I think they were trying to hide details so much that, they kind of went a little too far, and they ended up making a very vague story that didn't capture the fans like the other games did. So what do you guys think? In regards to Chloe, what do you think would have made double exposure better? And I don't mean bringing Chloe in and putting her in the game, but with what we have with double exposure, what would have made it better in terms of Chloe? Would extra photos, extra context made it better? Let me know what you guys think, because I would love to hear them. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!